Right now, everything you own, from the clothes you're wearing to the phone in your hand, is at the mercy of a 190-kilometer strip of water. This is the Suez Canal, a tiny geographic needle eye that the entire global economy is trying to pass through at once. And right now, that needle is breaking. But why would a massive cargo ship choose to wait for weeks in a danger zone instead of simply sailing around Africa? The answer is not just about fuel. It is about a geographic prison that has the modern world in handcuffs. If this thin blue line closes permanently, we are not just looking at higher gas prices. We are looking at the collapse of global logistics as we know it. Here is why the world's superpowers are terrified of this one map coordinate. This coordinate is the jugular vein of global commerce, a man-made fracture across the Egyptian desert that transformed geography into pure geopolitical power. In 1859, Ferdinand de Lesseps began carving this trench, forcing 1.5 million laborers into corvée labor. Over 30,000 workers died in the mud before the canal opened in 1869, cementing a permanent scar on the map. From its first day, this line served as a weapon of empire rather than a neutral shipping lane. The major powers recognized this instantly, attempting to neutralize the threat in 1888 with the Convention of Constantinople, which declared the canal open to all nations in peace and war. But laws on paper could not override the strategic reality of the soil. When Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the waterway in 1956, he triggered an immediate invasion by Britain, France, and Israel, proving that control over this water meant control over the global economy. 11 years later, during the Six-Day War, the canal closed entirely. For 8 years, 15 merchant ships, the Yellow Fleet, lay stranded in the Great Bitter Lake covered in desert sand. This frozen system proved that volatility was an inherent feature of the canal's design. At exactly 193.3 kilometers long, this trench connects two vast oceans of commerce through a physical needle eye. It acts as a geographic prison for 12% of all global trade. To manage this relentless flow, the Suez Canal Authority operates a strict, clockwork operating system. Roughly 46 ships transit daily, organized into highly structured northbound and southbound convoys. The passage takes 12 to 16 hours, and the margins for error are razor thin. Vessels must fit within unforgiving structural limits, a maximum beam of 77.5 meters, and a draft of 20.1 meters. In 2015, Egypt spent $8.5 billion on a parallel channel expansion, carving a 22-kilometer second lane to increase capacity. Yet, this massive engineering project did not eliminate the canal's physical vulnerability. In March 2021, the 400-meter container ship Ever Given lost steering in a narrow segment, ran aground, and completely choked the corridor for 6 days. The grounding proved that no amount of modern machinery can override the raw physical geography of a bottleneck. When this system seizes, global trade halts, leaving shipping lines with a punishing decision: wait out the crisis or face the long journey around Africa. Sailing around the southern tip of Africa represents a costly surrender to geography. When ships turn away from the Suez Canal and head toward the Cape of Good Hope, they abandon the shortest path between east and west for a punishing alternative. On a standard voyage from Asia to northern Europe, this detour adds roughly 3,500 nautical miles to the journey. That extra distance translates directly to 10 to 15 additional days at sea. For a global economy built on just-in-time logistics, these lost days disrupt schedules, breach delivery contracts, and throw port operations into chaos. The physical toll of the detour scales massively with the size of the vessel. For an ultra-large container ship, the extended voyage demands a roughly 5 to 7% increase in bunker fuel usage. This burning of massive fuel reserves results in a roughly 10 to 12% rise in carbon emissions, instantly erasing corporate sustainability targets. But the ultimate penalty is financial. Between extra fuel consumption, crew wages, and operational wear, The detour around the Cape can add about $1 million to the cost of a single container voyage. This massive expense reshapes the economics of the entire transit. It is a financial penalty that is never absorbed quietly by shipping lines, forcing a silent recalculation of value across the maritime industry and raising a demanding question: who ultimately pays for all that delay? The million-dollar penalty of the Cape detour does not vanish at sea. It quietly travels downstream, container by container, directly to the buyer. Modern electronics and automotive plants operate on razor-thin, just-in-time schedules, holding virtually zero safety stock. When a shipment of semiconductors is delayed, factory assembly lines half a world away grind to a sudden halt. High-tech smartphone supply chains are so tightly tuned that even a brief cargo delay can trigger hundreds of millions of dollars in lost weekly production. For major electronics manufacturers, a single week of tight component supply can add $400 million in operational costs, ultimately forcing retail price hikes of 2 to 4% on flagship consumer devices. Fast fashion retailers, relying on hyper-fast 4-week design-to-shelf cycles, face an immediate crisis when seasonal collections are trapped at sea. To save their inventory, companies are forced to abandon the ocean entirely and book emergency air freight. This desperate pivot raises shipping costs overnight, adding roughly 30 cents to the unit cost of a single garment and prompting price adjustments of up to 7% on store shelves. Ultimately, these escalating logistics expenses are passed directly to the consumer. The Suez Canal is actively woven into the price tag of ordinary goods. But when geopolitical volatility sparks violence, this fragile economic equation breaks. It transforms this vital corridor into a zone of raw physical danger, shifting the global crisis from a corporate balance sheet to an active battlefield. Today, this needle eye has transformed into a high-stakes fear corridor. Over 190 attacks have struck commercial vessels in these waters, fracturing the assumption of safe transit. This constant threat of violence reshapes maritime math before a single weapon is fired. Insurance premiums have surged 20-fold, turning a standard voyage into a massive financial gamble. On satellite trackers, AIS signals show vessels hesitating, clustering at the corridor's edge. For many ship owners, waiting in these tense waters is a calculated choice, still cheaper than a complete detour. The Suez is no longer just a canal. It is a pressurized zone where global commerce negotiates with raw geography. Is geography destiny? Or is it the ultimate weapon of the 21st century? Let me know in the comments. The Suez Canal Authority dictates who passes this needle eye and at what price. In 2025, the authority proved its control, wielding transit fees as a tactical dial by offering a 15% discount for massive ships over 130,000 tons. This single corridor remains the fiscal backbone of the state, generating $4.6 billion in a single fiscal year, equivalent to nearly a quarter of Egypt's gross domestic product. This massive revenue turns the Geographic Prison into a supreme diplomatic bargaining chip. Major powers must secure this gatekeeper, knowing a permanent halt would trigger a cascading global pricing shock. Egypt controls the gate to the jugular vein of world trade. The global economy remains trapped in this geographic prison, its jugular vein exposed to the next inevitable shock. Is geography destiny, or is it the ultimate weapon of the 21st century? Let me know in the comments.